Hey boys, it's HarmNone. In today's video, we're going to be going over my picks for the top 10 best weaponized helicopters in Grand Theft Auto Online. So for a helicopter to get onto this list, you guessed, it has to be weaponized. It has to have weapons that the pilot can fire or the passengers in the vehicle. Now sadly, there aren't actually that many weaponized helicopters in this game, but I have compiled a list of 10 helicopters that do have armament. So anyways, let's go ahead and get it started with number 10. And at number 10, we have the weaponized Canada. Now, everybody was really excited about the weaponized Canada when it was kind of announced in the trailer for the Los Santos Mercenaries DLC, but unfortunately, when it got added into the game, we discovered that it's not actually that good. To start things off, it goes for $3,385,000, and it is really cool looking. I actually think the weaponized Canada is one of the best looking helicopters in the entire game. However, anything that has to do with fighting or doing damage or missiles or weapons, anything like that, the weaponized Canada is pretty much useless in comparison to a lot of the other helicopters that are near its price point, so that is a huge shame. Now the weaponized Canada is very small, which means it is quite nimble, and it is also very fast. Now it's fast in a straight line, it's fast at turning, all of that sort of stuff is very good with the weaponized Canada. However, everything else kind of sucks. So the weaponized Canada has made it onto the list, but it's in last place for a reason, because this thing is just overpriced for what it is. If this was priced similarly to, say, the Buzzard, then it would definitely have a case to be made, but I think that the Buzzard is still a better helicopter. Anyways, that's it for number 10. Let's talk about number 9. Ahead of the weaponized Canada, and this might be a little bit criminal, but we have the Annihilator. Now the Annihilator goes for $1,825,000, or of course you can just steal it from any of the heliports. In fact, I would completely advise you to avoid purchasing the Annihilator in the first place, because it's not a very good helicopter overall. It does seat 4 players, and for weaponry it does have 4 miniguns that are mounted on the side of it, and they do a pretty hefty amount of damage. These things will take out a civilian car in no time at all. This thing shreds. These are some of the highest damaging guns in the entire game, and for that reason the Annihilator is just a little bit ahead of the weaponized Canada, because it does have some of the highest damaging machine guns in the entire game. It doesn't have missiles or anything like that, or any sort of armor, anything really cool or customizable, but at least the weapons do pretty good damage. And you can also steal it from the heliport or the airport, which is pretty good as well. That's it for number 9. Let's talk about number 8. Next up, number 8, we have the Valkyrie. Now the Valkyrie goes for $2,850,000 if you have the trade price, and if you don't have the trade price, it's going to run you $3,790,500. Now this thing is really good if you have friends, and only if you have friends. If you are a solo player, the Valkyrie is not a helicopter you are going to want in the slightest, because for the pilot, there's absolutely nothing you can do for that price tag, which is kind of insane to me. I think you should at least get access to something, but you don't. However, if you do have friends, this is one of the best armed helicopters in the air in Grand Theft Auto Online. It's pretty crazy. The co-pilot gets access to a automatic grenade launcher cannon, which it just insta-kills everything. And then if you have 2 more passengers, they get access to the miniguns mounted on the sides of the Valkyrie. So the Valkyrie is pretty good offensively for sure. Now the only problem with this is, first of all, you need to have friends to play with if you want to use the Valkyrie. And secondly, you have to make sure that you're not fighting anybody who has explosive rounds, because this thing will get destroyed instantly by an explosive round. So that's the unfortunate part of the Valkyrie. It is definitely a little bit overpriced for what you get, but if you do have friends, it is a pretty good vehicle nonetheless. Next up at number 7, we have the Sea Sparrow, coming in at $1,815,000. Now this is one of only a handful of vehicles that can actually land on water in Grand Theft Auto Online, which is pretty cool. When will this feature be useful? I'm not really sure, but it is pretty cool that you can do it. We don't have many vehicles that can go into the water in the first place, you know, and then we don't have like barely any vehicles that are in the air and then they can land on water or land, of course. So the Sea Sparrow is pretty good. Now you can either mount this thing with some machine guns, or you can have homing missiles. You can choose between one or the other. There's no in between, or there's no, you can't have both. You can only choose one or the other. So that is a little bit annoying, but the Sea Sparrow is a pretty cool helicopter. It is relatively fast. and being able to land on the water could come in useful in some certain scenarios, I would imagine. And for only 1.8 mil, it's not too bad actually price-wise. Anyway, that's it for the Sea Sparrow. Let's talk about number 6. At number 6, we have the Annihilator Stealth, coming in at $2,902,500. or $3,870,000 if you don't have the trade price for it. It is overpriced for what it is, but it does have some pretty cool features that are unique to the Annihilator Stealth. Now with the Annihilator Stealth, if you have players sitting in the back of it, they can actually rappel out of the helicopter so long as you are hovering relatively close to the ground, which is a really neat feature. Obviously, Annihilator Stealth, it does have stealth mode. You can go off the radar with this, so that is useful. It can also hold 6 players as opposed to 4, so that is pretty good as well. And of course, you can mount homing missiles on it or a 4-missile barrage. So overall, the Annihilator Stealth is not a terrible vehicle. It's not super great, but it's decent at the very least. So there you go. That's it for number 6. On to number 5. At number 5, we have the Buzzard. It goes for $1,750,000, or it can be stolen. However, I do believe that the Buzzard is an absolute life hack for early game in Grand Theft Auto Online when it comes to making money and moving around. It makes it a lot easier because you can spawn it in for free through the CEO menu as soon as you have purchased it, which is very useful. It's very good for doing headhunter, sightseer missions like that, to make some of your first money in online so that you can then buy some businesses and stuff. The Buzzard does have the highest damaging machine guns in the entire game, as well as homing or non-homing missiles, which is pretty good. It's also relatively small, so it's pretty nimble. You can get in between small spaces with it, which is of course a pretty good feature of the Buzzard. I still use my Buzzard all the time. I think it's a super useful vehicle, and it is definitely one that I would recommend for every single player to pick up. There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to say, well, no, buy the Sparrow. We're going to talk about that in a minute and why I think you should buy the Buzzard instead of the Sparrow. But anyways, that's it for number 5. Let's go ahead and talk about number 4. At number 4, we have the Savage, coming in at $1,950,000. Now this thing has the same cannon that the Hydra and the Laser had before they just got nerfed with the Los Santos Mercenaries update. However, the Savage still has the same cannon, but with much less range than the Hydra and the Laser ever had at their peak. So it's still really high damaging. You just have to be a little bit closer to your target with the Savage. Now the Savage also has fully spammable homing missiles and non-homing missiles, of course. It can seat 4 players, and overall it is a pretty good vehicle. It can also take a few explosives, not many, like maybe 1 or 2 before it blows up or gets disabled, but it does have a little bit of armor. Overall, it is actually a pretty good helicopter, and it is pretty underrated these days in Grand Theft Auto Online for sure. I would definitely say that I do recommend picking up a Savage if you guys are interested. Next up at number 3, we have the Sparrow. Now this thing goes for $1,800,000. But you will need to own a Kasatka submarine in order to purchase this, which is going to run you $2.2 million. So a lot of people will tell you to get the Sparrow instead of the Buzzard, like I was talking about earlier. But the Sparrow, the problem is it's going to cost you $4 mil to get a Sparrow, whereas the Buzzard is only $1,750,000. And the Sparrow is the same as the Sea Sparrow, where you can only have homing missiles on it, or you can have machine guns, and that is it. Now it is faster than the Buzzard in a straight line. It is a little bit more maneuverable as well. But overall, I do think that the Buzzard is a lot better because it is $2,250,000 cheaper. And yes, you can spawn the Sparrow in through the services menu, but you can also spawn the Buzzard in through the CEO menu. So either of them are pretty good. It's just the Sparrow is going to cost you a lot more money, which is why I think you should get a Buzzard, especially early game, over the Sparrow for sure. That's not to say the Sparrow is bad. It is really fast. It does have those homing missiles, does have machine guns that you can put on it as well instead of the homing missiles. Overall, it's decent. I just think that the Buzzard is a little bit better. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about number 2. Next up at number 2, we have the Akula, of course, coming in at $3,704,050, or $4,500,000 if you don't have the trade price. Now the Akula is the original stealth mode helicopter in Grand Theft Auto Online, which means you can disappear from the radar entirely when you're flying it, which is pretty cool. It can also seat 4 players, and it is very well armed, and it's quite quick. The pilot can get access to homing missiles or a 4-missile barrage, and you can also equip it with a dual minigun on the bottom as opposed to a single minigun as well. It also has bombs, and overall it is a very good helicopter. It does have the handling changes that you can do within the hangar as well, so you can have race handling or stock handling depending on how you want the Akula to respond. Overall, it is a very good helicopter, and it is definitely one that I would recommend, pretty much more so than anything else on this list. However, we do have the best offensive vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online at number 1, and it is of course the FH-1 Hunter. The FH-1 Hunter goes for $3,100,000 up to $4,123,000 if you don't have the trade price. This is the best helicopter in the game for going on the offensive by a long shot, as long as you have a co-pilot. Now, even if you are soloing the FH-1 Hunter, you still do get some pretty good stuff. You get access to bombs, you also get access to a 7-missile barrage, as well as homing missiles, which is pretty insane. So this thing can put out a lot of damage for sure, but if you have a co-pilot, it is even better, because the co-pilot gets access to a similar weapon to the Valkyrie, and it is a grenade launching autocannon that will pretty much one-shot anything that's not armored in the game, and anything that is armored will get destroyed pretty much instantly because it fires super fast and it has a very long range. The FH-1 Hunter is absolutely phenomenal. It does have countermeasures as well. It is a great helicopter, and it is definitely one that I would recommend to pick up for sure, especially if you play with a friend. If you don't play with a friend, I'd maybe put the Akula ahead of the FH-1 Hunter because that stealth mode ability is very good against players, but beyond that, they're both pretty much the two best helicopters in the entire game that are weaponized. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video on the top 10 weaponized helicopters in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned something, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike. Comment down below and let me know if I missed anything. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.